Hello there, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. One more live stream. Today is Sunday, March the 24th, and I see we have a few people waiting with questions here in our chat. Let's get started. Stephanie Shearing. Hello, Stephanie. Welcome here. Stephanie says, I am on a digital nomad visa and I'm currently on, I understand that as of 183 days, I have to fill in a Carnet Leon with my salary and tax paid in the United Kingdom. I have a property in the United Kingdom, which I only pay tax for at the end of the UK financial year in April via a self-assessment. I don't want to be taxed twice on it. I'm able to declare my income on my flat only in the imposto de renda. So, Stephanie, you are addressing specifically your property, right? So you don't pay tax for owning a property. You pay tax on the income that you get on the property. So you're saying I only pay tax for at the end of the UK financial year in April via a self-assessment, right? So I'm going to assume you're talking about the income that you're getting from your property in the United Kingdom. And if that's the case, it does not matter how you pay the taxes in the United Kingdom. In Brazil, you're gonna need to follow the Brazil standard, right? And most foreign citizens, they are gonna have the Carnet Leon. The Carnet Leon is basically a payment instrument that is gonna allow you to pay your Brazilian taxes on a monthly basis instead of a yearly basis. So again, you can pay in the UK a yearly assessment at the time that is due, but in Brazil, you can still pay on a monthly basis, and basically you're going to be reporting whatever income you're getting monthly, which should be easy for you to assess, and therefore you don't need to worry about the fact that you are paying in the UK once a year. And once you are filing your tax return in Brazil, you're probably going to be able to recover whatever taxes you paid in the UK that could potentially be considered a credit in your tax return in Brazil. Because the Carnet Leon is like an estimate. So you're paying monthly an estimate of taxes due. And when there is the tax return in April in Brazil, that's when everything that you filed throughout the year using the Carnet Leon and the information that you're entering, and then you could have potentially, you could have potentially a credit, meaning a refund, or if you still do additional taxes, then you can pay just the difference between the estimates that were made through the Carnet Leon and the actual taxes that you must pay according to the tax return. All right, Stephanie. And if you need like more specific advisory, we have our consultations. Many of the participants here in our live streams, they use both. Like they come here to chat with us, to learn from the experience of other foreign citizens living in Brazil, and whenever they have a specific need or something, that's more important to them, they can schedule a consultation. WS, Bill, welcome, Bill. Good to see you over here. Mario, welcome, Mario. Boa tarde, says Mario. And Stephanie Shearing, she's confirming, yes, that's correct, rental income. So just like I told you, Stephanie, you don't need to mimic exactly what you're doing in the UK. In Brazil, yes, the Carnet Leon is usually the standard. and you can file the Carnê-Leão based on the income on whatever rental you're getting on a monthly basis. And when you file the tax return, you're going to be basically conciliating whatever Carnê-Leões you paid and then the actual tax return. Mario, I was able to obtain the Brazil retirement visa. Congratulations, Mario. Okay, now there is however, right? Let's see the however. However, I still live in the U.S. as my primary residence. I will not be exceeding 183 days. Am I considered a tax resident or no-tax resident or both? That's an interesting question, Mario. So the Brazil retirement visa is not a permanent visa. So just because you got the Brazil retirement visa, you're not going to become automatically a tax resident. So as long as you do not exceed 183 days in any given 12-month period, you need to remember that we're not talking about calendar years. It's a moving bracket of time that's going to follow you. And as long as you're not exceeding 182 days, you're fine. You're not going to be a tax resident. Okay, Mario, very straightforward answer. Just, to clarify Mario's concern, some people, when they acquire the permanent residency through marriage, for instance, they automatically become a tax resident. They don't need to spend a single week in Brazil. Let's pretend, just for the sake of explanation, that this person arrives on a Monday, and on a Thursday they acquire the permanent residency. They are going to be a tax resident despite being in Brazil for just like 5 days. And actually, the tax residency is going to be retroactive to the day when they entered the country, meaning Monday. Stephanie Shearing, okay, great. Thank you, Stephanie, for participating. I hope to see you around, and feel free to share other concerns and questions as well. Mario, okay, thanks for explaining that. You're very welcome, Mario. But it's good that you always monitor the immigration updates, particularly for the retirement visa. It looks like they may offer you an option to become a permanent resident, which is not available to other visas such as the digital nomad. Okay, and we can tell about this possibility because of the increased paperwork requirements for you to secure a retirement visa. Until roughly October or November of last year, the paperwork to obtain a digital nomad was kind of equivalent to the paperwork you would need to obtain the retirement visa. But since November, we have observed an increase in requirements for the retirement visa, meaning that the new federal administration, they are going to give potentially more benefits to those securing the retirement visa, such as potentially the possibility of upgrading from a retirement visa to a permanent residency in Brazil. Mario, what website can I look on to see the exact value of my apartment so that I can get an estimate of the ITBI taxes I need to pay at closing? People say that the IBTI ITBI is determined by the market value, right? Yes, Mario. So this is going to be available usually on the municipality website. Okay, the annual property taxes, and is you're actually talking about the closing, right? Like, so there are two different taxes, just to explain to other people participating in our live. Whenever you buy a property, you're gonna pay a tax to buy the property, which is basically like a transfer, an ownership transfer tax, which is the ITBI that Mario is talking about. And then there's going to be a second one, which is the IPTU or IPTU, which is the annual tax. And the ITBI is going to be based on a few different numbers, and that's exactly what Mario is concerned about. And this number is going to vary. It's not going to be a single number, and not surprisingly, the tax authority is going to pick the highest number around. Okay, and usually the two numbers that are going to be considered are going to be the transaction amount, right? Basically, how much you're paying for the property. That's going to be one of the two amounts considered. And the second amount is going to be the reference table enforced by the prefeitura, or the municipality administration in which the property is sitting. And this is going to vary substantially depending on the city. And I can give you an example. Like in São Paulo, usually the reference price is going to be under market. So if you're buying a 1 million reais apartment in São Paulo, and if you're going to check the value for the property at the prefeitura, at the mayor's office website, usually you're going to see something around 800,000 reais or 900,000 reais. Okay. Now Mario is just sharing some not so good news in terms of the ITBI. He just said Leme, which means, of course, Rio de Janeiro. And Rio de Janeiro is exactly the opposite of São Paulo. So São Paulo, property is worth 1 million reais. You look at the reference price table, you're going to see something around 800, 900. In Rio de Janeiro is the opposite. Whenever you're buying a property for 1 million reais, you're gonna usually see that the Rio de Janeiro city's reference table is gonna be substantially higher. Okay, so if you buy a 1 million reais property, I've seen more than once properties being valued for 1.5 million reais, right? Which does not make much sense. Let's say from a common sense perspective, but from Rio's perspective, it makes a lot of sense. They are just getting an extra buck on you. Super common in Rio de Janeiro again. You buy a property for a certain amount, but the reference table is substantially higher. There are no basis for that other than getting additional money at your cost. Rio de Janeiro, unfortunately, for as much as it is an amazing city from different perspectives, it's plagued by corruption at the government level. And an example that I think is going to make this crystal clear is that out of the 10 last governors at the state level, at least 5 went to jail for corruption charges. So I think that means something. Just as of today, if you go to UOL, which is one of the main portals for news on Brazil, you're going to see that some very powerful people in Rio de Janeiro from the government side, they are being arrested for ordering the assassination of a very famous politician, Marielle. I'm not sure if you guys follow Rio de Janeiro, politics, but that news is from today. It's as fresh as it gets. They kind of believe they found those 2 politicians who ordered the assassination of Marielle, which was a leftist politician. She was always pushing for, social justice reform in Rio de Janeiro, and she was murdered, and is being investigated for several years. but it looks like they finally were able to find out who ordered the assassination of Marielle in the city of Rio de Janeiro. All right, so Rio de Janeiro, not a surprise. I don't believe anyone here in this live is going to be surprised when I say that. And I still love Rio de Janeiro, by the way, but it's one of the cities in which corruption has been plaguing the administration of the state and the city of Rio de Janeiro, right? So again, unfortunately, not surprising that whenever you buy a property in Rio de Janeiro, you're gonna, pay, for instance, 1 million reais, but the city is gonna charge you as if you were buying a 1.5 million reais a property, Mario. And I don't have a link to give you right now, but if you have like a realtor in the loop, they could give you the exact link for the city of Rio de Janeiro, assessment for this specific property, and then you're gonna find out how much more you're gonna pay on top of whatever the property is actually worth. In my experience, people are not gonna usually give up on a property just because they are overpaying. The difference in price is not going to be substantially, particularly if we're talking about a 1 million reais property. Even though they are overcharging you, usually in my experience, you're not going to be overpaying more than, for instance, 20,000 reais, which in US dollars we are talking about 4,000 US dollars in overcharge by the city of Rio de Janeiro. Again, all things considered, I don't think it is a showstopper. All right. Let's see what else we have. All right. So, talking about Rio de Janeiro, do you think it is still worth to buy properties in Rio de Janeiro? Yes, absolutely. Particularly if we are talking about the city of Rio de Janeiro, okay? If we're talking about properties close to the beach, historically they have appreciated in value, and it's a kind of decent investment in Brazil. It's not like an investment for you to realize a rate of return of 10-15%. Sometimes clients are going to come to us, or people coming, through a consultation. They're going to say something like this: listen, I'm considering buying this pre-construction apartment, right? They are offering for a good price. It's positioned in a desirable location. It could be Copacabana, it could be Ipanema, it could be Leblon, it could be Barra. And they are saying that if I do like short-term rentals or even traditional rental, I could be getting 10-15% rate of return. That does not happen in our experience. Usually it's going to be something like 5, 6, or 7% return per year. Okay, that's what we see people usually getting. They may provide you with some reference rental amounts, but they are not going to tell you that there's going to be a lot of management costs. For instance, when you're doing short-term rental in pretty much any city in Brazil, it could be Rio de Janeiro, it could be São Paulo, it could be Fortaleza, Florianópolis. Usually short-term management companies, they are going to charge you 20%. Okay, that's a lot of money that you're going to be paying, 20%, and this is going to be on top of whatever Airbnb or like Booking.com are going to be charging you. So potentially, right there, you're going to be letting go approximately like 30% of the rentals that you're getting. And in addition to that, maintenance, it's on top of this 30%. So all things considered, that's why we usually say that for Brazil, 5 to 7% rate of return, a real one, right? Not a made up or a pretending rate of return. That's what people are gonna realize, and like building up on top of this kind of real rate of return. When people ask us, so is it worth investing in Brazil at the end of the day? And our answer is yes, as long as you're not investing just for the sake of a return rate, right? If you're investing for a return rate, I'm pretty sure many of you are gonna know that just by investing in a Brazilian financial application nowadays, because of the high interest rates being offered by the Brazilian government, you can probably get a 90% without moving a finger, right? So for you to invest in real estate, you're probably looking for something else, not just a return rate. And the something else could be a deep connection to the country. Many of our clients, they've been visiting Brazil for decades, or they have they have a partner in Brazil, they have like a fiancé or a spouse, or they have a romantic relationship to someone. And that's going to change the equation, because then you're not looking, coldly at the numbers. You are going beyond the rates of return, right? I hope that makes sense. 123 Janio, that's a new member here in our live stream. Welcome, Janio. Janio says, hello, Luciano. If I become a tax resident, will I be subject to inheritance on assets outside of Brazil? That's a good question. So it's not really income, right? And I'm going to tell you, Janio, I don't know the answer to this question. Okay, I'm not going to make up something just to answer. I don't recall, but inheritance is not income. So if I had to, guess, like if I had a gun to my head and say, you got to give an answer, I would say probably not, but I don't know the answer. Okay, Janio? We will need to check on that particular question. But in my experience with both the Brazilian taxation system and the U.S. taxation system, usually inheritance is not considered income. It's considered to be a very specific type of situation that for each turn is going to be subjected to a very specific type of taxation. So it's not an income taxation, it's another type of taxation. And if I had to guess, I would say the Brazilian authority should not tax you on inheritance assets coming from abroad. But I could be wrong, okay, Junior? So I will have to check on that. If you want to participate in a future live stream, I may have an answer for that. All right, can you please tell us a little bit more about this Marielle thing that's going on in Rio de Janeiro? Yeah, so let me share the link with you guys. All right, so for those who know Brazil, like UOL is the internet portal from Folha de São Paulo, which is potentially the largest newspaper in Brazil. And if you open this link right now, you're gonna see a bunch of news, like all the main news. They are about the Marielle's case. Marielle, she was a politician from Rio de Janeiro. She was a left-oriented politician with very noble social justice reform agenda. And eventually she was murdered by the Rio de Janeiro police force, all right? That very, very concerning and very scary, right? But not like the organized, of course, Rio de Janeiro police force, but members, police officers who were members of the Rio de Janeiro police force. And eventually, they were able to catch these police officers. Of course, they are no longer members of the Rio de Janeiro police, but through several years of investigation, I don't know, I'm going to guess maybe 5 years or maybe even more. This happened a long time ago. And as of today, they believe they have finally found out who the politicians who ordered Marielle to be murdered are. Okay, so these are big news in Brazil as we speak. And there was participation from the Congress, from the Brazilian Supreme Court, because it looks like, not surprisingly, that the Rio de Janeiro politicians, they were organizing their political influence, like to derail the investigation, and that's why it took like so many years. But like with the participation of the Brazilian Supreme Court, they were able to overcome like all this influence from the politicians to derail or to slow down the investigation, and they finally were able to find some of the politicians who have ordered Marielle's murder. Okay, so that's it. Not really a bright side of Brazil, not really a bright side of Rio de Janeiro. That's usually a side that foreign citizens, they would rather not hear about. But Brazil, just like any other country, like it has its pros and it has its cons. And unfortunately, this is one of the cons that we know about in Rio de Janeiro. There is organized crime infiltrated in the police force, like in the city of Rio de Janeiro government, and of course like the state government, and so on. And Bill, by the way, is chiming in here. WS is Bill's nickname, and he says, I watch videos every day of Copacabana, Ipanema, and Leblon. The crime statistics seems to be better than they were a couple of years ago. What do you think, Bill? That's a question from Bill. Yes, I mean, I believe like like the organized crime, like the facções, like we say in Portuguese, like they exist. But I think that society as a whole is like starting to get fed up of this, criminal activity. So yes, like I said, Rio de Janeiro governors, they went to jail. Like politicians, traditional in Rio de Janeiro, they being sent to jail, and that's happening to the criminal, to the criminal bosses as well. So yes, maybe this is not going to be resolved overnight, but when this type of people are going to jail, I think there is hope, right? Because as long as there is an effort and there is like results in terms of removing those people from the management of Rio de Janeiro city and Rio de Janeiro as a state, I think that there is some hope. So yes, Bill, I believe. I didn't check, the stats to make sure that every single stat is improving. But like the reality is, people are mugged in Rio de Janeiro. Some people, unfortunately, they are murdered. But it's pretty safe to say that there are thousands and thousands of foreign citizens living their lives in Rio de Janeiro, in Copacabana, Ipanema, Leblon, downtown, without any problems at all. Okay? So that's the reality. People are living their lives. They are enjoying their lives in Rio de Janeiro, and that's it. All right. Do you think, like we are almost in April, do you think the visa requirement for US, Canada, and Australia citizens is going to finally kick in? Yes. I think it's the fourth time that Brazil is trying to implement the visa requirement for citizens from these three countries. But yes, this time I think it's for real. There was a good or reasonable explanation for why the Brazilian government decided to postpone the last three times, but now there is no a reasonable excuse for why Brazil would not require a visa to people from those three countries. So yes, if I had to guess, I would guess that on April the 10th, the visa requirement for citizens from the US, Australia, and Canada is going to kick in. And, without delving in too many details of why I think so, I think the main one is that it's not a huge burden on citizens from those three countries. They can potentially apply for the electronic visa online, okay, without much help. And the fee is basically $80, right? $80 goes to Brazil. There is an additional 90 cents that goes to the private party that is handling the application portal, the internet solution. So $80 goes to Brazil, 90 cents goes to the service provider. So it's super reasonable. It's not gonna, cause any financial strains to citizens from those three countries. The website is kind of cumbersome, but listen, if you are used to do stuff and work over the internet, it should not be something crazy for you to handle. And if it is, we are here to help you out. You can always reach out to our firm, and we've been assisting many citizens from the US, mostly some citizens from Canada, some citizens from Australia, to apply for the electronic visa. The electronic visa is going to be good. You can use the visa within a period of 10 years. You can use it more than once. And it's going to give you the traditional 90 days, right? So the visa is valid for 10 years, but it doesn't mean you can stay in Brazil for 10 years. Obviously, you can stay in Brazil for just 90 days as a US, Canada, or Australia citizen. But the good thing is, like, you can come maybe 2024, stay for 90 days, and then in 2025 you come again for an additional 90 days, and you can keep using the same visa. There is a catch here, which most people, they don't know. If your passport expires, the electronic visa, even though it is said to be good for 10 years, is going to die, is going to retire along with your passport. Therefore, if you have like a passport, a US passport, that's, is due to expire sometime like in the second semester or early in 2025, it may be a good idea for you to first get a new passport, which is going to give you 10 years, right? The US passport usually, unless you're not taking good care of your US passport, it's going to be good for 10 years. If you're not taking good care of your US passport, I don't know if you know about it, but the US is going to penalize you by giving you a 1-year passport. Who knows about that? That's something new to many people, right? Like US standard passports for 10 years. If you're not taking good care of your passport, if you lose it for a couple of times within a certain period of time, they're not going to give you a good passport anymore. They're going to give you a 1-year passport, which is a pain in the neck, right? But otherwise, you get the 10 years on your US passport, and then you get the electronic visa from Brazil, and you should be good to come into Brazil potentially every single year for up to 90 days. Okay, so yes, we believe that's going to happen on April the 10th, and we've been assisting many of our clients to get the electronic visa. All right, let me see what else we have here at the chat. Many questions about taxation. Taxation in general. Just remember that if you are not a tax resident in Brazil, you just need to worry about whatever money you're making in Brazil. So, most of our clients, they are not tax residents in Brazil. Most of our clients, they have a property in Brazil. For instance, just giving Mario's example. Mario is not our client, but I'm just using Mario as an example, right? Mario, it looks like he's in the process of buying an apartment in Rio de Janeiro, Leme, so he is asking about the ITBI taxes. Let's assume Mario buys an apartment in Rio de Janeiro. And then he's going to do again, just for the sake of an example, he's doing like short-term rental, and then twice a year, Mario is going to enjoy his apartment in Leme. Mario is not a tax resident, so Mario does not need to report his income from abroad to the Brazilian authority. This said, of course, Mario is going to need to pay taxes on the income that he's getting from his Rio de Janeiro apartment, right? Pretty fair. And that's going to be the case for most people unless you are either a permanent resident, and if you are a permanent resident, you're going to be a tax resident as well, or if you spend more than 183 days in Brazil. Okay? If you spend more than 183 days in Brazil, I like to joke, even if you are an illegal in the country or undocumented in the country, you're still a tax resident because you exceeded 183 days, and the tax authority, they don't care about your status, if you're legal, if you're illegal, if you have a visa, if you don't have a visa, they want your money, okay? So that's how it works. 123 Janio, thank you for addressing my question. What I read is that there is inheritance tax in Brazil, and it varies by state. The site did say that monetary gifts originating outside of Brazil are not taxed. Yeah, so this is kind of what I told you, right? If I had to guess, I would guess that inheritance does not trigger taxes in Brazil because traditionally inheritance is not income. So in my opinion, the tax authority should not go after this type of windfall, okay? And even though it is correct what you said, that the taxes in Brazil, they are set on a state-by-state basis, the factual way of assessing if you should pay inheritance taxes or not is based on the Constitution. So it's not like in the U.S. that states, they have a great degree of range in terms of how to tax people, right? Like for instance, in Texas there is no income tax, right, on the personal level. California, there is a huge tax on the personal level, right? So this type of range that you see in the U.S., you don't see in Brazil. In Brazil, the states, they are going to have much less range to decide what to do with taxes. So in reality, states are going to say, listen, I'm going to charge 3% on an inheritance tax, and another state is going to say, I'm going to charge 4%. Some states, they are going to charge a single bracket, across the board. Other states, they are going to have a progressive type of scheme, okay? But in Brazil, states, they don't have a big discretion in terms of how or when to tax people because they are constricted by the Brazilian Constitution which is not the case in the United States and other countries. All right, German, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Welcome, German. We have approximately an additional 15 or 16 minutes, but it's still good to see you, German. Welcome to our live stream. We have another participation by Mario. Stable union question. I have a female friend in Brazil who I have been friends with for 4 years. We do things together when I'm in Brazil, like hiking, events, etc. We consider ourselves friends only. Does Brazil look at this as a stable union? What if we no longer stay friends? And she states, we are, and now my apartment I purchased while we were friends is now a subject, right? And that's a valid concern, Mario. Brazil traditionally have been overzealous when it comes to a stable union. And the stable union is a kind of translation from união estável. That's how in Brazil we address a common law marriage. And a common law marriage on its turn, it means like you have a relationship with someone that ends up being considered as a marriage by a court of law, even though you never signed any papers, right? So you don't sign any papers, you don't have a child, you're not living necessarily with this person under the same roof, and still a court of law could say, you know what, like it looks like you guys are in a marriage, and therefore I'm gonna give some of your assets to this other lady. Okay, that's Mario's concern. And unfortunately, in Brazil, decisions they have not been, in my opinion, really reasonable. Okay, like there are cases of união estável, the so-called common law marriage for people who never lived under the same roof. They don't have children, and but they have a romantic relationship, right, Mario? So one of the questions here that could be helpful to answer your question, to help with a prognosis, is gonna be, listen, but is this just a friendship, like, or do you guys have an intimate relationship, right? Like, I mean, do you guys, like being very straightforward, like, do you guys have sex, right? I think that, for you guys to have a common law, a marriage or a stable union, sex should be an element, because otherwise it is just what you're saying, like this is a friendship and not a romantic relationship, right? So sex would be one of the elements. Another component is going to be how you guys present yourselves to society. So let's say Mario and Mario's friend, when they meet with other friends in Rio de Janeiro, how do you guys introduce yourselves? Are you going to show up like hugging each other? Are you going to, present yourselves as a couple? Like, well, Mario and I don't know, like, and Mario and Christina, like, are they going to travel together? All right, Mario and I, we're going to, travel in Europe, like we're going to enjoy our times together over there. If that's how your friend is introducing you guys to other people in Rio de Janeiro, it means you guys are introducing yourselves as a couple, and nobody's going to know if you guys have sex or not. And because you are introducing yourselves as a couple, potentially those same people that you are meeting could be called as a witness down the road to say, well, Mario was introducing himself along with Christina as a couple, and therefore there could be a claim. For common law marriage. Okay, Mario. I mean, very high level of input in your kind of prognosis. Of course, there are going to be many other components that should be considered, but nowadays, again, unfortunately, there is no requirement that people are living under the same roof. There is no requirement that people would have, like a child, and not even a requirement that people must be together for a certain period of time. For instance, like in the past, for anything for less than a year, people would laugh, right? Like say, come on, we come along marriage for less than a year. Now, there is no such a thing. Like we have actually a client here at the firm, and this client, like he spent literally 4 months with a lady, but he went all in, okay? So at the end of the day, yes, there was a presumption that this was a common law marriage for a 4-month relationship, and now we are cleaning up the mess. Okay, they basically got into a purchase of an apartment. The lady was able to assert a 50% claim into the apartment, and we have an approach that we call the carrot and the stick. We don't work with just the carrot or the stick. We work with both, right? So on one side, we send like a notice using a partner, criminal law firm, like assessing all the possibilities of framing this lady as a scammer. Okay, there was the stick, and the carrot. We offered like a really nice a settlement offer for her to basically, transfer the shares back to our client and go away. Okay, but that was a 4-month relationship. But the guy went all in. He went all in. Okay, like it wasn't just like Mario is saying, like they were like saying, all right, now we're gonna live as a couple. So there are distinctions in here. Joanna Cernick, welcome, Joanna. Good to see you here. I hope to see you again. So could you please tell me if I can buy a property in Brazil for $100,000 and be able to rent it out without a need for permanent residency? Yes, Joanna, that's a kind of common question, and I think it's a reasonable one. But in reality, like Brazil does not care what you're going to be doing with your property. So yes, even and just to give you a very extreme example, even if you never touch foot in Brazil, you can buy a property from abroad through a power of attorney. So you don't even have a tourist visa. You buy the property, and again, through the power of attorney, you could rent out this property without any concerns. Okay, so no need for any status whatsoever. You can, visit Brazil as a tourist. You can buy the apartment. Of course, you're going to need to produce a ton of documents. Brazil is pretty famous for red tape bureaucracy. So when you're buying properties in Brazil, usually you need, stuff like if you are single, you're going to need your birth certificate with an apostille, a sworn translation, recording in Brazil. There is a bunch of papers you're going to need to present for you to acquire legal ownership. But yes, you can rent out without any concerns. And actually, even for people who are buying the apartment for obtaining the legal residency, and then, of course, it must meet the minimum requirement, which as of today is 1 million reais, and you can still rent out the property, right? And you get the residency, rent out the property, and then you can travel around Brazil with the incomes that you're getting as a rental. But yes, Joanna, thumbs up, you can do so. All right, Moses Migbao. Moses, welcome. It has been a while since you last came to our live stream. Good to see you over here, Moses. Moses' question is regarding the purchase of a physical property worth 1 million reais. Is there anything like investing in a real estate fund or company of the same value that could qualify me for an investment visa? And the answer is absolutely not. Okay, Moses? There is no such track. Brazil wants you to buy a specific individual property. Brazil is not giving the visa to someone investing in a fund, investing in a company, investing in whatever you may think. You gotta buy a specific, well-defined property, otherwise you're not gonna get the visa. And that's a good question, Moses. We have this question kind of often here at the firm because, like if you think that the Brazilian government's goal is to get money, it should not really matter if you're sending the money to a specific property or to a fund. But the reasoning from the Brazilian government is that when you commit to a single property, like you're gonna keep this title as a proof of investment for as long as you wanna keep your residency in Brazil. If you're buying a fund, it's too easy for you to withdraw this money, right? Same thing with a company. Maybe you're buying shares in a company that owns a bunch of real estate, but you can also sell your participation too easily. And in my experience, and that's probably that's probably part of the Brazilian government's reasoning as well. It's not really easy for you to sell a property, particularly in Brazil. It's not easy to buy, but it's much more difficult to sell. Okay, so that's why they want you to buy a specific property, because then you are in for the long term. If you buy, shares in an investment fund, you could in theory sell on the next month, and then you have your immigration benefit. That's not the idea. The idea is for you to stay invested in Brazil, ideally for decades to come, and not like a couple of months. All right, Moses, I hope it makes sense. Mario, so Mario is providing additional information about the scenario we will be discussing about the common law marriage. We have always presented ourselves as friends to others. All right, I hear you. Mario, when I purchased my apartment with my lawyer, I presented myself as single foreigner in my documents. I hear, Mario. Yes, the way you present yourself to others, it should always be as friends, right? But in Brazil, we like to joke. Some people, they present themselves as friends, and then we call it friends with benefits, right? So I'm just saying it's not a settle, not just because you believe you're presenting yourselves as a friends, that there is no risk. But yes, it sounds like something positive. And there is still some common sense in the Brazilian judges' heads, right? Like, so, I mean, as long as there is no, very strong evidence otherwise, if you guys are really friends, I think you should have a very strong defense against a potential claim for common law marriage access to your assets. Okay, Mario? Ronnie Dio, welcome, Ronnie. I am an independent musician. Is there a visa for artists? My music is online and has done very well in Brazil. I visited Brazil. Also, I will be taxed when bringing my music equipment in Brazil. Yes, Ronnie, there is a specific type of visa that is available for, to DJs, right? I'm not sure if you are a DJ or if you play instruments, but yes, Brazil does value, artists, and it does have a specific visa for this purpose, which you can, like, if you search on our website, you're gonna find it. Just go to oliveiralawyers.com and Google artist visa, and you're gonna find the visa. In terms of your music equipment. So if your equipment could be brought with you in the airplane after you have the visa, you have a strong basis to avoid the taxation, right? And if you're thinking about shipping in a container, most probably than not, the cost that you're gonna face with the brokerage, like with the customs broker, with releasing the container from the port, at the end of the day, is not gonna be worth the trouble. Okay. Now, if you're bringing this stuff with you, make sure you have the visa first. Make sure you have all the paperwork explaining that you are moving to Brazil based on a residency visa, and you should have a good shot in terms of avoiding taxes, right? And I say a good shot because nobody at customs they're not gonna have this information in front of them, and you're gonna need to make your case, right? Now, if you're working with a law firm, that law firm would ideally present you with the legal foundation to avoid the taxation, and then you're gonna show this document to the customs in Brazil when arriving with your equipment, ideally, again, as luggage, not shipping through containers. Crypto Nerd, so good to see you here, Crypto Nerd. Crypto Nerd has been following us maybe for years now, right, Crypto Nerd? So it's really good to see you here. Greetings from Mumbai, India, from the other side of the world. I've been to Mumbai. I've been to Pune. I spent some time in Pune. I spent some time in Mumbai. There was probably 15 years ago. We were doing some development down there. So we basically went to explore the possibility of setting up an office in Pune. Some people say Pune, some people say Pune. You probably know what's the correct pronunciation, right, Crypto Nerd? There was also, I don't know the name, but it's like a large, it's a large community. Osho, O-S-H-O, Osho, right? That's the name that I recall. It's a really nice space. It's in Pune or in Pune. And this space is dedicated to advance consciousness and other aspects of the human being that goes beyond possessions, right? So that's what I recall from Pune. Of course, many of the U.S. Companies based on Pune, like Microsoft, there was IBM, a lot of outsourcing. So that's what I went there 15 years ago. Joanna Sersnik, can I purchase the property under 1 million Brazilian reais? Could lead down the road to permanent residency. Joanna, yeah, so as of today, and the reason why I say as of today is because immigration rules, they change, and the current administration, right, the President Lula administration, it's not the same administration that created the residence through real estate investment, right? This route was created by President Bolsonaro, and I'm sure you know there is a huge gap between, the ideology between the two administrations. However, I think that President Lula is going to keep the residency route through real estate just because it does bring a lot of money to the country. And President Lula, of course, like being a left side president, he's going to want to spend more money than the government is able to get through taxes, right? It's typical of like the political orientation of President Lula. So every money is going to count, and therefore the Lula administration, most probably than not, is going to keep the program in place and maybe correct the 1 million reais, Joanna. That's something I need to tell you, because when President Bolsonaro created the real estate investment route back in 2018, it was created with the 1 billion reais already, right? So now we are 6 years down the road with the very same amount. And again, for an administration that is always trying to get more money to spend even more, it could make sense for the President Lula's administration to increase the amount. But as of today, if you buy 500,000 reais in an apartment, and a year later you buy an additional 500,000 reais apartment, yes, you could combine both properties, and then with the combined amount for these two properties, you could potentially get the residency. Okay, again, just two heads ups. The first one, the amount may be changing eventually. The second one is that you must buy these properties that qualify not only by the value, but there are other requirements as well. For instance, rural properties do not qualify. So if you buy a tract of land that is rural, that's not going to qualify no matter what. Another example, if you buy properties like in the Northeast, it's super common for people to buy the plot of land, even though it's urban, there is no property on it. And then they're going to build something, but they're still not going to record the construction. And bare land, even when it's urban, is not going to qualify as well. So I just gave you two examples, Joanna, about why it's super important to have people along with you before you actually buy the property, right? Some people, they do the opposite. They go out there, they buy, they rely on realtors, and then only then they show up. Well, I bought the properties. Now I wanted to apply for the visa. And not surprisingly, many times they are not going to qualify. Because again, it's not just like the number of reais that the property must be worth, but there are many other factors that are going to be reviewed when you are applying for the residency. All right. Let's take a couple of last questions. Moses, if the current exchange rate is $1 for 5 reais, and I send it $30,000 to money exchange bank provided by developer, but in return they say they only receive it 147,000 reais. I believe they are lying to me. So Moses, like the thing is, like whenever you send the money, whenever an exchange bank is gonna exchange currency, they never gonna get the same thing as you see as a current exchange rate. Okay, whenever a developer is gonna have this money exchanged, the exchange bank is gonna give them less money than what you see as an ongoing rate. Is the same thing like whenever you go to an airport, right? Like, I mean, let's say if you see on the news, you get 5 Brazilian reais for $1, but you go to the airport, nobody's gonna give you the 5 reais, okay? They're gonna give you 4.5 at the airport. Of course, the developer is gonna get more, but the developer is not gonna get the 5 reais. And to tell you the truth, like if that's the deal you're getting, 30,000 US dollars getting you 147,000 reais. It sounds like a good deal, and it does sound correct to me. Okay, Moses. WS, very, very good. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill, for your support as usual. All right, Crypto Nerd, Mumbai is my hometown. So glad to know, Crypto Nerd. I couldn't tell. Thank you for sharing. Used to live in Pune for 6 years. Both of your pronunciations of Pune are correct. Osho or Osho is very famous in Pune for meditation reasons. Yes, I went over there. It was like during the weekend, and it was amazing. There were people from all over the world. So you're pretty lucky. You live. It looks like to me, Crypto Nerd, you live in a very good area of India. I know that Mumbai is a huge city, and there are so many interesting sites, and it's a very well developed city in India. Good for you. All right, so I'm gonna thank everyone. There's one last question here by Crypto Nerd. Are there options to purchase property via crypto directly or indirectly, especially in Floripa, Rio, and São Paulo? So, Crypto Nerd, Floripa, Floripa, because of the startup scene, I know that there are a lot of crypto guys in Florianopolis, okay? Rio de Janeiro, people are usually older, like people who are selling real estate in Rio de Janeiro. They don't like crypto at all, okay? I would say you're going to have a hard time using crypto to buy real estate in Rio. São Paulo is in between. São Paulo is not as traditional when it comes to money as Rio de Janeiro. Is more dynamic. São Paulo is, of course, more business-oriented. But Floripa would be your best bet crypto, just because for Floripa, again, the tech scene in Floripa is ahead of Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, and you may very well find someone who's going to get the crypto and sign a deed of sale for you. So the cartório, the registry, they are not going to inquiry into how you're being paid, okay? It's more something to be decided between you and the seller. And in Florianopolis, we have a colleague of ours over there. If you just go to our channel, Crypto Nerd, and search for Florianopolis, you're gonna find this guy. His name is James Rocks. James Rocks. Okay, you can search again. Go to our YouTube channel, search for Florianopolis or James Rocks. James Rocks. He's from the UK. But he's probably even more Brazilian than I am, because he's a Brazilian by choice. He loves Brazil. He's been throughout Brazil, and he chose Florianopolis as his hometown, and he's super experienced. Experienced with real estate transactions with foreign citizens. So a very good choice for you to chat with and see if maybe one of his clients is willing to have, like a cryptocurrency transaction. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Thank you again, all of you. I hope to see you guys again in our next live stream. And by the way, we're not going to have a live stream on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I'm actually traveling to Ceará, Fortaleza. I'm going to stay in Ceará for a couple of weeks. So since I'm traveling on Wednesday, I'm not going to be able to have our live stream on Wednesday. But yes, we're going to have our live stream next Sunday, straight from Ceará. And I hope to see you all. You guys have a blessed rest of your day.